The January window of World Cup qualifiers is done and over with, so it's time to, of course, review. Before we go into this video, however, if we can get 3,000 likes, that would be absolutely great. We'll start out with the South American regions. And oh, Colombia. Colombia.
I don't want to see anymore. I don't want to see anymore, bro.
Winless and scoreless in their last 5 qualifiers. They needed things to change up this window. First was Peru, where the urgency to score goals meant them going all-out attack, basically. Colombia dominated with 30 shots, but didn't score once with just 2 on goal. Peru, on the other hand, only needed 1 shot on target to win the match. After the game, I presume that the home fans weren't really that happy after throwing projectiles at their own players. Next was Argentina, and you guessed it, Colombia didn't score again. Argentina went on to extend their own streak of 29 games unbeaten, and it should be mentioned that Lautaro Martinez has 7 goals in this campaign. But throughout every single preview and review, we have seen this Colombian side die a slow and very painful death.
Shoot me. I can't take it anymore.
In this window alone, they went from 4th, a qualification spot, all the way down to 7th. Lord knows what is happening with this Colombian side, but their players cannot finish for shit. One nation who has had a completely opposite story though, Peru. Since their abysmal starts, they have only lost 1 of their last 5 matches. Colombia was already mentioned, but Peru also grabbed a massive point against Ecuador. And with 2 games to go, Peru is hanging on to that 5th place intercontinental spot with their lives. Ecuador had some pretty difficult fixtures, but they still managed to get some results at least. Peru away was a squandered 3 points, despite Ecuador having Josh f***ing Allen on the pitch. Brazil was the other fixture, and this was the epitome of CONMEBOL chaos. First, it started with Brazil scoring in the first 6 minutes. Then you had Ecuador's keeper Alexander Dominguez pulling a Nigel de Jong. But unlike Nigel, Alexander got a red card for his antics. And then just 5 minutes later, Emerson Royale gets his 2nd yellow. It's only been 20 minutes, mind you. Then another 5 minutes pass and Alisson is sent off. However, VAR goes back and decides it's just a yellow. Later into the second half, Ecuador grab a huge equalizer. But wait. There's somehow more. Alisson gets sent off again, but then that's rescinded again after VAR finds out Alisson didn't game end the Ecuadorian on purpose. Finally, the game ends and it's an ideal point for Ecuador while Brazil are still yet to lose in their campaign after eliminating Paraguay. And breathe. Ecuador only got 2 points in this window, but 1 win next window, and they're into the big dance. Uruguay started this window in 7th after some terrible performances, and that resulted in their longtime head coach being sacked. And with their new coach, Diego Alonso, they got 2 massive victories against Paraguay and Venezuela. They've now jumped up to 4th, just 1 point above Peru. Chile still have a chance to qualify, and that's all thanks to prime Alexis Sanchez just popping out of nowhere. He scored 2 goals in a 5-goal thriller against Bolivia. Speaking of Bolivia, this is a window to forget. Along with the loss versus Chile, Salomon Rondon made the Sea Level Merchants his bitch. They can no longer automatically qualify, but the intercontinental spot is still in the distance. Did anyone see Canada
Shut up! Shut up! How many times do we have to hear this statement?
Canada came into this window missing a couple players, including their star, Alphonso Davies. But you know who they weren't missing? Jonathan David. The Canadians won every single game this window 2-0, including against the United States and Hamilton. The Canadians' win against El Salvador means they're assured at least intercontinental playoffs. It is truly an incredible time to be a fan of Canadian football. The United States, despite having a pretty bumpy road this time around, still maintains 2nd place. The first match against El Salvador proved that whenever Greg Berhalter faces a proper system, he's going to be outplayed. The US barely scratched a win, where on another day El Salvador grabs a point. Next was Canada, where all those flaws seen against El Salvador were exposed in its fullest. After losing to the Canadians 2-0, Greg Berhalter in a press conference claimed to have dominated Canada. Not this shit again. Finally was Honduras, the most convincing result against one of the worst Honduran sides in recent time.
Wait, he's taking selfies? In the middle of the match? Have some f***ing respect, Fucking hell, I hate this motherfucker.
Mexico were not doing too hot going into January, with Panama breathing down their necks. They were going to need a lot of improvement in order to keep their qualification hopes alive. And it didn't start off great, conceding against Jamaica, but in just 3 minutes, the Mexicans turned it around for 3 points. Mexico then followed that up with an uninspiring performance against Costa Rica, but the Mexican Greg Berhalter ended the window on a high, beating Panama in controversial fashion. A solid showing on paper, but this Mexican side is still very underwhelming. Much like the US, if this team qualifies for the World Cup, expect them to be out in the group stages if Tata stays. Panama couldn't get much out of this window besides a win against Jamaica. They are barely holding on to 4th place, with their next couple of matches being against the US and Canada. As for the Reggae Boys, they are officially eliminated, with fans scratching their heads thinking how could so much potential be thrown away.
I'm talking to God himself. I need prayer. I need my prayers answered for just once.
Speaking of elimination, that would be the case for Honduras too. Costa Rica, on the other hand, were not mentioned in the preview, but definitely should be in the review because they had a massive window. Shrines in the US and Mexico will be created in Brian Ruiz's name thanks to his game-winning goal versus Panama. And following a 0-0 draw against Mexico, Los Ticos grabbed a win against Jamaica. They sit 5th, just below Panama, having revived their campaign, scoring the 2nd most points in this window alone. El Salvador this window entered the portal to hell, having to face both 1st and 2nd place. But a win versus Honduras keeps their qualification hopes barely alive. Lastly, Asian qualifiers. We firstly start off with Mehdi Taremi's goal in the 48th minute versus Iraq, which was enough to send Iran to their 3rd consecutive World Cup. And no Son, no problem. 2 wins from South Korea, including a 2-0 score versus Syria featuring the Kim Wall, sees South Korea also going to Qatar. So it all comes down to the playoff spots. UAE were able to gain a win and extend their gap between them and Lebanon to 3 points. Lebanon and Iraq could only get a point from each other, but are still able to grab 3rd spot on the final day.
Bad luck to talk.
Group B, on the other hand, is very eventful at the top. No one has qualified just yet. Saudi Arabia came close defeating Oman, but their qualification party will have to wait after Japan's impressive 2-0 win in Saitama. Speaking of Japan, after having a pretty abysmal start, they are on fire, having seemingly worked out all the kinks. They've won their last 5 matches, but not only that, they have kept clean sheets in 4. Junya Watanabe? No, but Junya Ito has scored in his last 4 consecutive matches. And the midfield trio of Eo Tanaka, Hidemasa Morita, and Wataru Endo have played a huge part in the recent success. Australia took care of business against Vietnam, but could only grab a point in Oman thanks to some careless mistakes in the back. But luckily for Australia, Oman's point was not enough to keep their hopes alive. However, the Aussies will still be hunting for an automatic qualification spot, because remember, AFC face up against CONMEBOL's team in the Intercontinental Playoffs. China have not won since October when they defeated Vietnam at the death, and following a loss to Japan, the Chinese were demolished by Vietnam on Lunar New Year, the nation's 5th consecutive loss. And what followed was a complete meltdown on Chinese social media. Some were even calling for the disbandment of the team altogether. As for Vietnam, after 7 straight losses, this team finally gets their first win in the final round of qualifiers. It is also the first time a Southeast Asian team has won in the final round of qualifiers. Now, if you want my full reaction as a Vietnamese supporter, there'll be a link up there. So now we wait for March, when goes absolutely mental. CONCACAF and AFC will see their final matches. CONMEBOL is being set up to be absolute chaos for the last 3 spots. Also, don't forget that Europe and Africa have their playoffs in March. We'll be talking more about that in the previews though. And finally, OFC starts their qualifiers in March. So with all that being said, I cannot wait for March. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and a massive shout out to our patrons, Janos Balas, Alex Rod, Daniel Ortiz, Edgar A.S., Joseph Bonfante, Lacazette Goat, Nguyen Dim Min Tang, The Motor Drive, Victor, Dominic Griffin, Emmett Shea, Lewis, Joe Gallagher, Tomagas, Andres Tube Gaming, Big Bird, Cash Getty, Exo, Casa, and Nathan Trong. If you'd like to join the Patreon, there'll be a link down below in the description and in the annotations above. You can follow me on Twitter if you'd like for any video updates, all that kind of stuff. Follow my Instagram if you want. Follow my TikTok, which actually just hit 5,000, so that's pretty sick. Let's go for 6,000. And of course, you can follow my inactive Twitch, which might actually be active because we're closing in on 50k and I might do a countdown. But until then, I'll see you guys.